Welcome to the Org Design Podcast. We're coming live, recording from ODF, the Org Design Festival. My name's Tim Brewer. I'm one of the podcast hosts on the Org Design Podcast. I also have Amy Springer with me today.
Morning, Tim.
Great to have you here, Amy. You enjoying the ODF conference?
Yes, so amazing. Everyone is just so wonderful, open-minded people.
Well, look, we're lucky enough to have Cynthia, our guest today.
Hello.
Welcome along. Before we ask about your org design history, you're quite involved in the Org Design Forum who run the conference. For those people that are out there that are org designers, suspect they might be an org designer or a org design geek maybe, what do people, when they're wanting to come along and be a part of a community like this, think? Why are they coming along and getting deeper into the org design capability or developing their career around org design?
Yes, I'm on the board. I've been on the board for 7 years. So it's been amazing. And Org Design Forum is a nonprofit organization based out of the United States that if you're an org design practitioner or HR business partner or just looking to learn more about org design, there is a website called organizationdesignforum.org that you can go to and look at all of the resources that are there. We hold an annual conference that we're at this year. We're at in Minneapolis this year. And it's where a lot of practitioners come together and get the latest information, feedback, insight on the field or different topics around org design. This year's conference is heavily focused on generative AI on work and the field of org design. So that's what we've been focusing on. It's an amazing group of practitioners, very welcoming, open. We try to share all the material that is presented at the conference. And what people will find, there's no charge to join. Our community is free. And we have monthly community conversations, podcasts, things like that, that you can find or just join a session every month to talk about just a different org design topic.
So everyone I've spoken to, Cynthia, has said no one chose to be in org design. They've just fallen into org design. They've accidentally ended up here. Is that the same story for you?
Yes, actually, I just completely fell into org design. I grew up in human resources, so started my career at Intel, worked there for 10 years in just different HR specialties, and then moved to Nike, where I was there for almost 15 years. And when I was at Nike, I started working as an HR business partner. Did that for the majority of my career there. Somewhere along the way, the capability of org design came in saying, hey, if you're an HR business partner, you're expected to do org design, which I had no idea what that was. I just, okay, well, where do I learn this? So I just went on the internet and I looked to see classes in org design. And I actually found the USC Center of Effective Organization that teaches organization design. And they specialize in the Galbraith Star model, which I think you've probably heard a lot of in the session this week. And that's where I learned. So I took the class and started practicing different elements of org design, and we can talk about what those are. But really, that's how I learned it, was I went and took classes in it. And USC CEO also offers advanced course in org design, which I also took. And then I also tried to practice. I went back as an HR business partner. After I took the class, I tried to practice it within the groups that I supported. And that's how I started to apply organization design elements to the businesses.
Actually, at conference, I met a few different HR partners, business partners, probably similar to your background. Of all the different things that you were doing at that time, what was it about org design that caught your attention or that you really liked or that gave you energy to end up now being such a specialist in org design?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that really attracted me to the field was just the strategic and systems thinking approach that organization design does around trying to solve organizational issues. So, as a generalist, it could be a compensation issue, a leadership issue, whatever issue you're trying to solve for. Organization design starts with the business strategy. It really starts with what is going on in the business, which, as an HR business partner, I always try to understand the businesses that I support in, not coming from a perspective of I'm in HR and I want to try to apply a different model to you. It's what is happening in the business that I can help you try to fix or resolve and move forward in what you're trying to achieve. And organizational design does that by starting with strategy. What's the business strategy? What are the capabilities that you're trying to build with that strategy? And then what elements? Is it structural? Is it process? Is it rewards? Are there people skills that need to be improved or assessed? What is it that will help the business move forward in how they want to achieve their goals? And so providing that holistic perspective was really helpful as a business partner. And I found a lot of satisfaction in doing that work.
One of the things that I'm sure we've all seen in organizations, what goes wrong when people aren't thinking about the organization design or it's been done very reactively. Can you share carefully about some of the situations where you've walked into and someone's thought, oh, this isn't an org design problem. You're like, this is definitely an org design problem. What are the things that go wrong? And for the audience, which is typically leaders leading a business that's grown very fast under them, or they've gone into a new leadership role and don't have org design experience, how do they know they've got an org design problem on their hands when they're looking at their business?
What I usually do when I go and talk to leaders and look at the situation, what leaders often do is they stop seeing what the issue is in front of them versus maybe going a little deeper and asking more questions. So, for example, if a leader often comes into a new organization and says, I need to change X, Y, and Z role or person in the role because they feel that role or that person is not what they need. And oftentimes it goes deeper than that. Just changing that person or that role is not going to solve your issue. It might have to be, are they really focused on the right things? Is the person overwhelmed because the organization is not situated in the right way? So oftentimes as a leader, just really stepping back and looking at the bigger picture and understanding what's the strategy, what's the vision for the organization, and how can they achieve that in the most effective way. I think the other issue that's pretty common is trying to say it's an organizational issue or like trying to solve budget issues or cost constraints and saying this is org design when it's actually not. When you have to hit a number, you have to hit your budget number. Don't call it organization design. It's a budget cut. So those are things that I would say to leaders, hey, if you want to do this well and if you want to do this right, let's step back and take a look at the strategic focus and where is it that you need to grow and how can you maybe reinvest in areas and divest from other areas in order to achieve what you want.
Are you able to share an example of this that you've seen in your real life practice?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories. Let me give you kind of a story where something didn't work out. There was one time where we knew that there was a budget constraint and the leader had to cut a certain department when this was a merchandising department. And merchandising actually was a very important capability for that group. And they outsourced it. We cut the headcount and we saved, quote unquote, the money on the internal resources. 2 years later, they rehired all of the merchandisers back into that department because it was such a critical part of what they needed. So that was done in the spirit of, hey, we needed to save money, but we actually didn't in the end. So
I think that's really interesting. And Chris said that yesterday. The keynote speaker from yesterday, Chris Worley,
yeah.
you studied at the same college, correct?
Right. So
Yeah.
he was actually one of the teachers at the USC
cool.
CEO.
Yeah. We asked a few of the similar questions, and actually it's similar to what you said. I think that's really important for a leader to not just assume like, oh, I'll just get a new person in that role, but actually to go back to the strategy and ask the question, what's really important for an organization to do well?
Yes.
Let's say I was leading an organization and thinking like, how do I have a healthy org design culture? How do I make sure my organization's ready to deal with the future, which just seems to be increasing, like changes once every 3 years or once every 5 year thing.
Yeah.
This is like iterative. And we've heard a lot of people at the conference talk about people are not prepared for that. They think, oh, I went through a transformational change. It's over now.
Right.
But it's not. By the time they start one change,
Yes.
the next change kicks off and it just seems to be relentless. What advice would you give a leader about how to prepare their organization to do that well?
I often say with leaders, it's progress, not perfection. And there's never a destination. So that's something to think through, that business is iterative. The economy evolves, the business evolves, people evolve, the times change. And so you're always going to be iterating. The thing is to make sure that you're doing it in a very thoughtful way, that there's purpose behind it. And so when I go in and work with leaders, I always try to design 2 to 3 years out. So here's your strategy, because your strategy should be forward thinking as well. And so if you were to take everything off the board right now and think 2 to 3 years out, what would your organization look like? And then work backwards from there and saying, okay, so what steps do I need to work today in order to get to that future vision? And knowing that next year, that situation will change, but hopefully you're headed in just making that progress in the organization, that you're setting them up for success.
Focusing on the work you now do at Elena Consulting, tell us a little bit about, for people that, like, we just don't have the capability internally, there's too much of a jump to go from our current org design culture, our current structure, to where we think we might need to be. How do they know they're a good fit for Elena Consulting, the work that you do now? Where are you spending your time? What are you enjoying doing most?
I really enjoy just working in the specific field of org design, and I'll tell you what that looks like. So that encompasses coming into different companies and potentially what I do at a diagnostic. So I'll do an assessment. So what I'll do is work with the leadership team, and I have a set of questions around how is the organization working, what's not working, what's the strategy, do people understand the strategy, how are decisions made in the organization, what are the pain points in the organization, do you have the right skills to achieve what your future goals are, what are the gaps. So I do an analysis, and that's called a diagnostic. And after that diagnostic is completed, then we'll go in and decide. Some people end right there. It's like, I just want to know what's wrong, what issues I'm facing in my organization. But then we'll go into more of the design. What I like to do is co-create. I don't believe in coming in with a set model of here's what your organization can look like. I actually include the leadership team and hopefully more of the next level leaders in designing their future. So we would go off and do some workshops around what that future design could look like. And it's not just structure. So that's one piece of it, but also looking at the key processes that are important that would support that structure. What are the reward systems what are the behaviors that you want to see that need to change in the organization? And then what are the important competencies and skills that people need in that future organization? So we do a lot of that work so that you can set that vision. And then the last piece, and the most important, is how do you start to activate or implement that vision? And so I will help companies or help leaders or teams try to implement what they've envisioned.
Thank you. That is such tangible tips for people to follow. In that summary, Cynthia, you mentioned the word future a lot, and that your primary goal with your leaders is to think 2-3 years in the future. The last couple of days in the conference, we've been talking about all the different things that are happening in our world right now and the things that are coming. What piques your interest the most in relation to the changes we're experiencing in the world and in relation to org design?
Yeah, I think the impact of generative AI and technology on the workforce is inevitable. And what intrigued me the most is the question around how will our jobs be augmented by this new technology? Mm-hmm. So that is super intriguing of really thinking about, and it could be as simple as automation, right? It's not. And so that's what is intriguing me the most as far as how do I start to include that? How do teams start to think about that as they think about the future as far as we need the same number of people? Will the work look the same? How might it be augmented by whatever system they're using or whatever technology they will be supported by?
Awesome. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us on the Org Design Podcast. Amy, as always, it's great having you here. And for everyone listening along, another podcast coming live. We are coming live from the Org Design Festival, which is put on by the Org Design Forum. So for those of you who are practitioners or do something thinking, oh, maybe actually I'm doing all of this org design work, a great organization to find and be a part of, and a true volunteer-led community. And so thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you.
It's a total pleasure. And have a great day.
Thank you.